All right, guys, welcome to the second episode of the Average Joseph Podcast 101 exclusives. Today, we're going to be learning about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is the confidence con. And again, what I want to reiterate is that when I'm doing these segments, like I'm getting the information out there, but I'm also learning about it myself at times. Some of these things, the idea when I approached these exclusives was lessons that I've learned, but I'm incorporating other content as well, because the way I would look at it is being able to identify an experience that I've had and kind of condense it, distill it down into like a summary of how I articulate this process, and then I research that and see if there is a adjacent or similar concept. And so the Dunning-Kruger effect is what is what we'll be talking about today. And this started with me looking into why does it bother me so bad when people are overly confident and I feel like they shouldn't be. And saying that out loud, like I guess that makes me sound like a prude or kind of maybe like a brat, but really it gets on my nerves, because I feel like there's times when people are overly confident or very sure of themselves, and maybe they have the right to be sure of themselves, but there's just something about the way they're presenting themselves that really gets under my skin, and that's what led me to this. So let's talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever wondered why some people are way too sure of themselves, or why you doubt your own skills? This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's your brain's sneaky confidence trap. And today we'll be unpacking what it is, why it messes with us, and how to beat it. It's much more broad than the certain people being overconfident. That's just what's the starting point for this. So number one, low skill people overestimate their ability. They don't know what they don't know. High skill people underestimate theirs. They assume everyone's as good as they are. An example of this would be your coworker who's amazing at working with a computer, but also seems to crash every spreadsheet. And when it's talking about being amazing with a computer, it doesn't mean like they actually are. It's the way this person acts. Like they act like they're technologically savvy, but yet an arguably simple program like Excel or even just Microsoft Office, and they'll be asking you questions. Hey, what about this? I experienced this a lot in the military. So especially with like higher ups, because it was always like it was instilled in you that anyone who outranks you, especially when it comes like you're junior enlisted, like if there's a non-commissioned officer around or an officer around, you treat them with the utmost respect. Like they are, like there's something about their existence that puts them well ahead of you. But then like some of them were humble, a lot of them weren't, and then the ones that weren't humble, there was a good chunk of them that when you interacted with them, you got the impression that maybe they knew about half of what they were talking about. The Dunning-Kruger effect was discovered by David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999. David Dunning and Justin Kruger are psychologists. Like I said, it's a distilled version. It's a distilled down, concentrated summary of a process that's observable over time. So why does this happen? I'm talking about why is it that people overestimate or underestimate their own abilities. So the first one is lack of metacognition. thinking about how you think about things, or thinking about what you think about things, or thinking about why you think about certain things, why you think about things. So the idea isn't the subject of what you're thinking about so much as the what, how, and why you are thinking about certain things. So, for an example, if I'm in the military and I'm thinking about the M4 carbine, and I'm going through, and I'm not even going to begin to do the different stats of it because I've brain dumped all of those things. But at one point in time, I could tell you, well, I still remember the point target is, I think it's 500 meters and area is 600 meters. And I'm not even going to begin breaking down point and area target. But the reason why I would think about those things, the reason why I would think about those things is because I needed to know that for, well, at the time it was so if I got questioned on it, I wouldn't give the wrong answer and end up getting corrected in any capacity. The real reason, though, the intended reason, is so that if I'm engaging the enemy, I know that up to about 500 meters, I can put out some pretty accurate shots if I'm a good shot. And then at 600 meters, maybe not so accurate, but the rounds are going to be impacting close enough to the enemy that they're probably going to want to be keeping their heads down. And so I just explained point and area to you. Anyway, so there's a why as to why we think about things. That's metacognition. When it comes to the Dunning-Kruger effect, the why is beginners can't judge their own gaps. When I say they can't judge their own gaps, they probably aren't even aware of the fact that they are lacking or missing anything. They don't stop to think about, hey, I know this stuff. I wonder if there's stuff that I don't know. Or like if the people that underestimate their own abilities, like they pay attention to their faults, but they don't pay attention. They don't stop to think about, hey, what am I actually good at? So there's an absence of thinking about what they're not paying attention to. All right. There's also ego protection. So confidence feels better than doubt. So when it comes to someone that thinks more highly of themselves than they should, they do that because if they don't do that, their ego is going to get hurt. The opposite is also true for the people that have low self-esteem. They talk negatively about themselves because if they talk positively about themselves, they're well aware that at some point they're going to mess up and that's going to hurt them. So they would just rather from the get-go be like, I'm not that great. And then thirdly is social cues. So we compare ourselves to the loudest and not the best. Comparing ourselves to the loudest, not the best. So because in my mind when I read that, I'm thinking, why would I not compare myself to the best? Well, it's because the best isn't always the loudest. So yeah, there's going to be people that are like probably really good at one thing and they're going to be loud about it, and then we're going to feel self-conscious about it. But the person that's kind of like best overall is probably not going to be bragging that much. So we compare ourselves to the one that's what makes the most sense. So one example is a friend who's basically a chef after one good TikTok recipe. I like that. Don't know. I can't say I know anybody specifically that's done that where they follow one recipe and then they think they're a chef, but reading that, like I know the intent of what they're trying to get at, and I think the vast majority of us know that. And so, and that person, like, what would benefit them would be like, okay, you followed one good TikTok recipe and you did a great job. Absolutely, like, acknowledge the fact that you did a good job, but don't walk around like, I'm a chef now, because you're not. Like, you're, I mean, chefs have to go to school and all that good stuff. And that's not even the point. I'm not trying to minimize the good in what you're doing. It's just like, don't put yourself on a pedestal, you know? You can be proud of yourself without, you can be proud of yourself with humility. So there's harm that comes from the Dunning-Kruger effect. So there's overconfidence, underconfidence, and then there's real world stakes. Overconfidence, the way this can get you in trouble is you'll end up taking on tasks you're not ready for, like leading a meeting or a project that tanks. Underconfidence, you'll pass up opportunities or skip opportunities, or you just don't try because you think you're not good enough, or you believe that if you start it you're going to fail, or you believe that if you do fail that's the worst thing ever. And then there's real world stakes. So misjudging your skills can cost jobs, relationships, or money, and that's absolutely true. And so then the low self-esteem person's going to be like, so I'm just not going to do it to begin with. And then the high self-esteem person, not the high, when I say high self-esteem, I don't mean healthy self-esteem. I mean the person that thinks more highly of themselves than they should. They're going to end up doing that. They'll be like, oh, I can do that, you know, and then they take on more than they bite off more than they can chew. And then there's consequences for that. So the Dunning-Kruger curve, it occurs so it's the journey of competence, which is good. We want to head towards competence. And it occurs in 5 stages. Stage 1 is the peak of Mount Stupid. Low skill, high confidence. Stage 2 is the valley of despair. You realize how much you don't know. Stage 3, slope of enlightenment. Your skills grow, your confidence stabilizes. And then stage 4 is the plateau of mastery. You're great, but humble. I think this is awesome because what this does is it provides a way forward for everybody, even the person that's overly confident and the person that has extremely low self-esteem that's not confident at all. What this does is what's it, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, what they have done is shown that if you are willing to be honest with yourself. So we talked about self-deception last time. This would be like self-deception would fall into this when you're not paying attention to the things that you need to, right? So when you start paying attention to the things that you need to and you're honest with yourself, but then you say, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm not as good as I thought I was, or I'm not as talented or as skilled as I thought I was. I'm going to humble myself and I'm going to learn because I know that I can. I started off on the wrong foot, but at least I started and I'm going to keep going. And then you start to figure out where you are and you figure out the direction you need to go, and then you just start going. And then you tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to be perfect at this. I'm going to mess up. I could even mess up more than I feel like I probably should. But does that mean that I'm headed in the wrong direction? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to learn every step of the way. And so, yeah, I think this is a great way to conceptualize growth. I think it's a great way to help us to understand where other people are. So when we have that person that thinks a little bit too highly of themselves, it can be annoying, but we can remind we can remind ourselves that, hey, if they're not wanting to, if I try to genuinely help them and they don't want to listen, or if they ask for my help, more especially if they ask for my help and then they disregard it, that's, it's on them. But if they're honest with themselves, they'll learn from that. It's okay to let people fail. So for the high self-esteem people, it's okay to let them fail, and for the low self-esteem people, it's okay to fail as well. But what we need to do for individuals with low self-esteem is to ensure that they know, that they understand that failure is like it's okay. That the fact that there's ever been an overemphasis on failure to begin with, I almost feel like has been because of the people that's had that high esteem, and and instead of learning to stand up on their own, they have they haven't, like, instead of showing and demonstrating their own skills, they've pointed out the flaws in other people, and then the people that negatively like has an effect on, they really internalize that. So, but yeah, I like I said, I think this is a great way to conceptualize what's going on with highly confident people, and and again, not competent people, but confident. Confidence isn't bad, but it's not great if you don't have the competence to back it up. All right. All right, guys, I hope you learned something, and I hope you're able to uh, take it and apply it. If you see it in yourself, remember metacognition, because that is super huge for growth. And like we talked about in the very first or the previous episode with the self-deception, this is metacognition is the way forward out of that. All right, thank you.